others, but I'd also like to do a specific welcome to our councillor, Claire Holland, who's sitting amongst us. And I know she has a very busy schedule, so catch her while you can. I also wanted to do some thank yous. I want to thank Margarita, who has done all the food that you see at the back. We're very grateful to her. She's just done it out. She often does do our catering, but for grander things we have managed to eat together funds. But today she's just done it out of the kindness of her heart. So very grateful to her, and very grateful to Andrea, who helped organise all that. I also wanted to thank the LFN, who I've told you a bit about. They continue to sponsor us this year, and that has enabled us to pay for printing costs for the posters that you might have seen around, refreshments and subsidies for some of the leafleting we've had to do during the year, and you'll hear more about that in a minute. But one of the people I did want to specifically mention tonight, because it is a very exciting place to be allowed to be in, is Lucy Swanson, who's here amongst us, who enabled us to have a little trial of using the foundry. This is a one-off for us. They want to make contact with the local community. This room is available should you be interested during the daytime, but evenings we very much pulled a special favour, so this isn't a normal thing. So enjoy it while it lasts, and we just wanted to say thank you. So if you'd like to come up, we brought you a little thank you gift from us. So Lucy works for Equality Act that runs this building, and they are trying to make more links with the community, and this is just a trial. So you now know who to go to. I would not be standing here today if it wasn't for some very special people who served on the board this year. This year being 2017-18, and we talk about year in two different ways. One is the year from AGM to AGM, so for us it's from 1st of October to 31st of September, but weirdly we run our accounts on a different year, and we send our things to the company's house on a different year again. So we're slightly out of kilter on certain things, and I'll let Michael explain that. But I need to thank Martin Ossingor, who's not with us at the moment, David Boardman, who again is not here today, and he stepped down from the committee in June, but without him the committee would not have been able to understand planning over the many years he's sat very patiently teaching us. But then there are some very special people who are amongst us. Andrea Hoffling, who's sitting at the front, Byron Green, who's on mechanics there, Marilyn, who's hiding at the back, and Michael, who's sitting beside me. And amongst them and me, we are your committee who've worked tirelessly throughout the year. We managed to co-opt Richard Finch, who joined us in, I think, September, and he has a town planning background which has been invaluable, and he's standing there and has been greeting you as you come in. So, today is actually going to be my last day as your chair. I have been serving the committee for about 7 years, maybe 8 years. I've kind of lost count, but either way I'm beyond what they recommend for no-land rules, which means that it is time for me to go. I've served as chair of this committee for at least 4 years, and it's been a huge honour to serve my community, to serve all of you, but really also to work with some of the nicest people around. They've been great, they've been very tolerant, very supportive, and I've learned more from each of them individually in terms of kindness and planning and thinking things through in a different way than I can ever really encapsulate in my allocated slot without holding you up for the rest of the evening. But it's giving me the opportunity to do a bit of reflection. So I started as the representative for the Friends of Vauxhall Park, and I got involved because in 2008 I attended in my welly boots on a cold dark night a presentation at the Lost Theatre. There I was presented with what became known as the Vauxhall Nine Elms Development Opportunity Area, when it was just that, an idea. You can now see, a decade later, the results, for better or worse. I was so annoyed by it when I asked where would a park be given all the extra housing, and I was told not to worry, it would emerge somehow from the plan, that I then decided on that moment to join KOV and try and make a positive contribution and find some land. Most of Vauxhall Nine Elms Battersea Development Opportunity Area, as we all know, is in Wandsworth, and I could tell you more about that another time. When I first started, a very well-known and elderly lady called Maureen Johnston was chair, and I have to say the KOV was run in a bit of a mysterious way to me, so it took a long time to get to know what was going on. It was accused at that time of being a closed shop and a talking shop, and although that was possibly true on some level, actually there was a lot that was being done, and it was her idea to get different local groups together so that we could coordinate our voice and unite as one on big issues, and I think that still stands. It was then followed by my immediate predecessor, Malcolm, who took over at an enormous time of change, both for the organisation. Maureen Johnston died very suddenly, and we had to just pick up from nothing. I miss Maureen dreadfully, even now. And so that was a huge uphill challenge, and it was also a huge change for the area. He made it much clearer to us that we needed to be clearer about what our purpose was. He achieved a lot in a very short time, getting us back out into the community. We had become quite introverted, just talking to people we knew already, and he encouraged us to go out. He made us get in contact with schools. He started to ask the community more about their opinions, getting people to vote at meetings, which was very exciting, although could sometimes be, as we've all learned with referendums, slightly divisive. But he also helped to carve out quite a clear line for us on the Vauxhall Gyratory. And he took up the cause of leaseholders, dealing with what was then Lambeth Living, and showing them a better way of allocating costs. My first meeting, when he left, however, was a baptism of fire, and it was dealing with the Vauxhall Gyratory, and that has followed me ever since. At that time, I had Kate Hoey standing here as your local MP, not here but actually in the Carmelita, and we had over 120 people in the room, standing room only, and it was a very angry meeting. Nonetheless, it was a great response from the community, and even now I see some of you who probably that was your first meeting too, and that's great. One of my proudest moments as chair has been doing positive things, one of which was that we ran a survey about the Vauxhall Food Garden when their licence came up, and we were able to show to Lambeth that, contrary to some of the more vociferous opinion amongst us, it wasn't necessarily the majority opinion, and that actually most people were quite happy to find a really good daytime use for that space, and it has continued today. But we also have come to realise, through a number of very difficult cases that we've had to deal with, that planning is a tricky business. We started as a reactive organisation, responding as and when planning and licensing came up. We have not had always as much success as I think we deserved, I would say that. But we came to realise that as early you got into the process, the better. And in fact, we wanted to be rule makers, not rule takers. And I use that term very advisedly because it's about the neighbourhood plan. The neighbourhood plan is what we have now laboured over for 2 years solid, and why you don't see so much of us on the ground necessarily. It is about us creating the rules for how we want planning to be delivered in our area for future generations. In the last year, we have run a big consulting event for you. We were able to unveil the first draft of our neighbourhood plan. It covered a number of matters, and we had a really good response. We're still working through that response even now. And in particular, we're working through some really helpful, if challenging, responses from Lambeth Council, who at the moment are in the process of reviewing their local plan. And actually tonight feeds in very neatly both to our local plan, but also to our neighbourhood plan. We were due to receive a third round of funding from locality, but the rules changed at the last minute, and although we did receive our third tranche of income this year, with thanks to Marilyn's judicious administration, it wasn't as much as we had hoped. So we are running on a shoestring, though our accounts tell a slightly different story. Our key areas for the neighbourhood plan are greening in all its guises, and we've now got some really good policies to show you when it comes to referendum. Basements, which we were slightly ahead of our time, and Lambeth have actually adopted a lot of what we've already suggested. Transparency on financial viability assessments, and we're still working on that. Local centres and how to support them, and we're particularly thinking of the Kennington Cross area, and linked to that, employment space. And again, the review of the local plan by Lambeth wants to create more local spaces. So we're seeing how we can come up with some practical detail to support that. The fourth item on our neighbourhood plan is, fifth is key local views. And the final, but by no means the least, is air pollution. And that is the focus for tonight. We did have a chapter allocating special requirements for specific sites, not least the gas holders, but time has not been on our side. Despite our reasoned objections, approval has been given for a substantial and in parts high-rise development. We were in very early, but Berkeley Homes did not want to listen. It's a major opportunity that I think has sadly been lost for the community to gain a small new park that would redress the open space deficiency, but too late. Additionally, due to the lack of transparency, the justification provided by the developer Berkeley Homes has been allowed to get away with less affordable housing than Lambeth's 40% should expect. It's about 15%. Moreover, and there's an article actually published in the Standard last week listing all the buildings that we've seen go up in the Vauxhall 9 Elms Battery development area, and not one of them has hit 40%. Hence, our need for transparency. Moreover, in the case of the Berkeley Homes, the development ignored the need to limit car spaces to a set quota. We brought this to the attention of both the Mayor of London and the Secretary of State at the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, but they ignored it. As a result, yet again, there will be a greater impact on air pollution, as we'll come to hear. We therefore had to drop this chapter from our neighbourhood plan, but if anything shows you how important it is that we get one in and we get it in soon, that is a case in point. Unfortunately, for reasons we're still exploring with Lambeth Council, we are subject to a number of additional hurdles, in particular a strategic evaluation assessment, which will slow down the date. We can send this to referendum, but we are pretty close to getting to what we call Regulation 15. So we've done Regulation 14 this year. Next year we should hit Regulation 15, and with any luck, Regulation 16, which basically means it goes to the examiner and goes to referendum. We will need your support and votes when the time comes. So do keep watching out for our emails. Though intermittent, they do contain important information. We have, in the background, despite our clear focus on neighbourhood plans, continued to support a number of applications of people behind the scenes on planning applications. In particular, we've supported Vergurta with their challenges over Graphite Square that are ongoing at the moment, and over 8 Albert Embankment, where the developers are proposing to go back and go higher now because they've decided the market can't tolerate the number of affordable housing units they're supposed to deliver. All this, I'm afraid, is under the dismal backdrop of windows falling from corniche, killing passers-by. I wish this was the first time the windows had fallen, but this is actually the second. So although it's a bleak past, I'm looking forward to a very positive future, and the board continuing to work hard to deliver this. I'm now pleased to hand over to Michael to give his report very briefly, and then we'll move to elections and the real meat of tonight.
Thank you very much. I've been told to keep this to about 1 minute, which is a bit hard for me. For those of you who don't, the accounts are of course the highlight of any AGM. Basically, last year we had £12,990 income, and expenditure was £10,169. Basically, over the years, we typically spend a little bit over £10,000, and we have a similar income. So on average, we're balanced. But the way our income arrives, it always arrives just before the accounting year, so our cash flow goes a bit like that. So it always looks like we're rich. I assure you we're not that rich. We have a few assets. I think one of our most successful ones has been the gazebo, which we use at the farmers market and for other events. The PA system that we lend out to various people, and some of the computer equipment we see here. That's what, when we say assets, those are our assets. We've got about just over 16,000 in the bank. If you have any questions, the accounts will be on the website. And if you're really, really sad, there'll be a spreadsheet showing every item of expenditure way back to when the beginning of KOV first started many years ago, and you can check them all. That's all I want to say. If you have any questions, please ask away.
In that case, can I ask for a proposer and a seconder to agree those accounts? Thank you. That's John and Martin. So, I also think we ought to thank Michael hugely for his efforts as treasurer. He has he pieced together all the accounts going back to when we set up, because they were not handed over in quite the way one would have liked. So it's a major piece of work done. So I now move to election of board members. Before I do that, I actually need to say a really heartfelt thank you to my colleagues again. And I would like you to put a round of applause to them, and that is Byron, Andrea, Michael, Martin, Marilyn, and I'm looking around, but I think that's it. So if you could please thank them profusely on my behalf. We advertised for new members to join us, as well as asking for any objections. I'm pleased to report that Michael, Byron, Marilyn and Andrea have stood again, and that we received no objections. So on that basis, they are duly elected to serve for another year. I am stepping down. We did also ask for new nominations. We do seriously warmly welcome you volunteers. We need you to serve your community. So you still have an opportunity tonight. Does anyone want to join now? Please say so. This is really sad, because ultimately it's not fair on the people here that they have to carry the weight for the community. Yeah, Martin. Sorry, Martin as well is being nominated. I'm sorry, I didn't read your name. Okay, is there anybody else though? Okay. So, the board would also like to re-co-opt Richard Finch to continue to guide us on planning. And again, does anybody have any objections? Great. So he is now co-opted. The last thing on this list, I think, no, that's it. It's done. So, we are bang on time. It's 7 o'clock. You have 15 minutes for a comfort break, and then I'm going to move into air pollution. Please do take refreshments in that 15 minutes, and as you know, toilets around there. colleagues, I was asked who's going to be chair when I go, and the answer is I don't know, but what happens is when the board whom you've now elected meet again after this AGM, they decide amongst themselves and a name will emerge, but it won't be me. So, this next session is a really important one. It's about air pollution and what we can do about it. We were in front of the curve because we brought up air quality in this area about 3 years ago, and everything since has proved us right. Lambeth has been reviewing their local plan, and high on their agenda too now is air quality. They have set out an air quality action plan from 2017 to 2022, and I really recommend you reading it. It's on their website. Very easy to find. I googled it today. In Lambeth, and this is lifted from their report, Public Health England has estimated that, are you ready for this, 112 deaths per year can be attributed to air pollution amongst people aged 25 and over. Air pollution tends to impact on the young and vulnerable more, especially those living on main roads. At present, road transport is the main source of pollution in Lambeth. This is despite Lambeth having some of the lowest car ownership in the country. In the Lambeth Action Plan on air quality, there are 5 priority action areas, of which 2 are in our area. Kennington Oval, Camberwell New Road, Kennington Park Road is one of them, and the other is Vauxhall Cross. When you look at the maps, you will see that our area is yellow or red or orange. As you go further out, it's greener. The report also acknowledges that there's diminishing council budgets and has no significant specific projects identified in our area. So tonight, I'm delighted to have 4 expert speakers to help us put some flesh on our neighbourhood plan so that we actually can ask for, as a priority, some really practical things to happen for us and for our benefit. We need them. So, I have, if you could stand up, Aaron Kiely from the Clean Air Campaign at Friends of the Earth, and he will be speaking first. I have Honor Puciato, Senior Air Quality Consultant from AECOM, and she's going to be speaking second, and she's an advisor on environmental impact assessments in the planning process. And they're going to set the scene for us. I'm going to ask them to speak one after the other, and then you'll be given the opportunity to ask some questions. We then have 2 more speakers, and then there'll be more questions. Fred Ballois from Source London, about electric cars and the network of chargers and charging them. And I've already said, as a driver of an electric car, I don't just want to be given niceties, I want to be told practicalities. And then Caspar Hughes about cargo bikes, and he's from Last Mile Mobility. And we're going to end on him as he has some really practical suggestions for us. So if I could invite, first of all, Aaron to the podium to speak, and we'll take it from there.
I do have to apologise because I think Aaron's killed the PowerPoint.
Sorry.
Just because he didn't bring one himself. And literally just the moment you see all the text down. I'll keep trying. But,
Sorry about that, that was not intentional. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Aaron Kiely, and I am an air pollution campaigner at Friends of the Earth. And for you who are not familiar with Friends of the Earth, we're an international grassroots environmental and social justice organisation, and our main priority is trying to stop catastrophic climate change from happening in a fair and sustainable way. I work on an air pollution campaign that we started a few years ago as well. I think you probably beat us, and we're ahead of the curve on raising it before we did start our national campaign. But really what has emerged since then, it's become extremely clear that air pollution is a public health crisis. and that over 100 deaths that are caused here roughly means there are up to 36,000 early deaths because of air pollution every single year across the whole of the UK. These are lives that are cut short because the air that people breathe is so toxic and harmful. And London, as many of you know, is one of the most polluted cities in the country and also Europe, and there are 9,000 early deaths here in this city every year as well. And air pollution doesn't just cut life short, it can make existing health conditions a lot worse. So for example, asthma can be exacerbated, and actually it can trigger heart attacks. It's even been linked with changes in the brain that are linked to dementia. So air pollution, there are so many different forms of it, really is a risk to many of us. And actually the thing that I found most striking, the thing that I've learned about, is the impact that air pollution has on children and young people that are growing up and developing. There are some studies that have been done which show that in some of the most polluted parts of London, children are growing with up to 10% less lung capacity compared to people who are breathing in, children who are breathing in cleaner air. So this is really, really worrying. But the positive, actually, I don't want to demoralise everyone, is actually we can do something about this, because actually action to improve air quality actually can reverse a lot of the damage that has been done previously. And at the moment, this is a really exciting time, because actually, similarly, kind of with the planning process, councils are discussing, some of the most polluted towns and cities are discussing what they're going to do about air pollution. As many of you will be aware, that the government has been pretty much brought to court several times now over its failure to deal with the legal levels of air pollution. And from that process, some of the most polluted places in the country have been tasked to basically restrict polluting vehicles in an effort to try and clean up the air that people are breathing. So London's one of those places, but because the air pollution is so bad, they've kind of been on it for a few years now, so hopefully many of you will be familiar with the ultra low emission zone and the zero emission zone that's going to come in fairly soon. Those are all efforts to try and deal with the air pollution problem. And the other places are Birmingham, Derby, Leeds, Southampton, Nottingham as well. So, air pollution is not just a London problem, it is a problem across the country. But, we've just been saying this is such an important issue. We really do need to act to protect people's health and deal with this crisis. So one of the things that I'm proud about with Friends of the Earth is actually we want socially just solutions to the problems that we face. So one of the big things that we've been calling for example, is a scrappage scheme to help people actually make a transition to cleaner vehicles, alongside just saying you can't drive here. You actually do need to help drivers. I know you've got low car ownership here, but across the country it's very difficult to get around without your car. And also there's a particular issue, and it might come up in the Q&A, around diesel, which is one of the most polluting fuels that people can use. And actually, lots of diesel drivers were told actually that diesel's the green choice, that's the green option. So it's particularly, particularly you need to make sure that actually they're helped to get out of those polluting vehicles now. Now everyone knows how bad they are for people's health. And yeah, we don't just mean getting people out of a very highly polluting car into kind of just one that's just less polluting. Fundamentally, I think we actually need to look at lowering the amount of fossil fuel power cars pretty much altogether on the roads. Provide more rail, more electric, bikes that people can use, bus passes, car club memberships, etc. We have to really drive down the amount of petrol and diesel vehicles on the road altogether. And actually, a scrappage scheme, many people go, it's very, very expensive. Actually, what is not often talked about enough is actually the role of car manufacturers in all of this. Many of them have sold us these vehicles, knowing full well actually the damage that's done to people's health, and obviously the unsustainable kind of fuel for it. And Britain has long been a place kind of obsessed for years, kind of with the car, and all we've heard about is kind of Chelsea tractors invading loads of places that they're totally not needed, and the ever-expanding number of cars kind of in many houses, parked outside many households, and kind of surge in diesel. But actually, kind of campaigns that Friends of the Earth, our local activists and network have been running, is really challenging that actually, and standing up to what is a very, very powerful and well-resourced lobby. And despite billions of pounds kind of lobbying efforts against us, and actually they're linked with kind of national government, we're fighting back and actually trying to say that we want action on air pollution, we want a sustainable future, and actually people have the right to breathe clean air. And I think if we campaign hard, we can win. We've already seen a huge amount, a turnaround in actually people's take-up of diesel vehicles, and actually they're more looking at electric vehicles, and actually most people are just saying actually going to try and use public transport or walk and cycle instead. And one of the things that I've picked up from this forum meeting today is the importance of trying to reach out with the community. I think the way that air pollution affects everyone, but actually it doesn't affect everyone equally, and some of the most poorest and disadvantaged people are disproportionately suffer. They're the ones who tend to live on the main roads. You know, who can't afford to live in kind of leafier areas. And actually there's even a study done that actually found that BME people are exposed to the most damaging and most dangerous types of air pollution. So there's many, many reasons to act. We've been trying to do that, and you know, had lots of success in campaigning, but I don't know how many of you saw that about a week and a half ago there was a report come out from the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and they released a report saying that we've basically got 10 years to stop runaway climate change. And actually this is a really, really critical moment. We have to actually take it seriously and you know, reduce the amount of greenhouse gases that are going into the atmosphere if we want to have any chance of a future. Transport is actually one of the biggest contributors actually to greenhouse gas emissions in the UK, but actually we just have to fundamentally build a world, and it will happen very soon. It's already happening where we don't have kind of petrol and diesel, and that will go a long way to solving air pollution as well. So it's kind of there's lots of benefits basically from moving away from this kind of dirty technology. It's absolutely critical that we look to a phase out of diesel and petrol by 2030. The government at the moment are saying it's 2040. That needs to be brought ahead significantly if we're going to have a chance. So I was asked as well finally to say what you can do, and I just wanted to share a few things that we at Friends of the Earth have been supporting. So I remember we were on the streets of Tower Hamlets 3 years ago, we were asking people what do you think about air pollution, and they're a bit like, oh, it's not bad, it's not really a big problem here, and we kind of had to say, do you realise that you're in one of the most polluted roads in the whole of Europe? And they just kind of looked shocked, because the issue of air pollution is that so often you can't see it, you can't actually realise the impact that it's having on you and on your health. And since then I think we've seen a huge amount of public awareness and understanding of air pollution and the importance of dealing with it. And so we wanted to help people understand the air pollution that was around them and kind of affecting them and their communities. So we actually supported 5,000 people to take part in a massive, groundbreaking citizen science experiment, monitoring, using kind of air quality monitoring tubes, putting them up outside their homes and finding out what the air quality was like around them, getting a bit of a sense of it and understanding. We also supported over 100 local groups and community groups to do the same and set up kind of monitoring projects for their areas, for their estates, for their neighbourhoods, and then we built a big map with the results. And just kind of through this, we just wanted to get people talking about air pollution, kind of mapping out what the problem is and hopefully coming together to then find the solutions. So that kind of phase of our campaign after several years is kind of coming to a close, but we do want to still keep supporting communities taking action. So we're developing kind of an online action guide and lots of resources, templates, guides, and including kind of direction and advice on engaging in the planning process as well, so that's very, very important. And we've got experts that have worked on air pollution for many, many years at Friends of the Earth. We want to make sure it's possible we can actually skill and train and share knowledge and skills with people across the country who do want to do this. So please do get in touch if you want help or a bit of advice. We're also working, I have got the resources and I'll pass them around, on the Clean Air Schools project. We actually think it's really important that children who are so disproportionately affected are able and empowered to actually talk about this issue, to understand it and take some sort of action. We want the whole kind of school community, parents, teachers, children, taking action. And one of the things that I think is quite leading is Hackney Council's decision that they will have around kind of like schools, around drop-off and pick-up times, they'll close the roads in an effort to basically deter and discourage people from making that really, really busy run, which, to be honest, probably isn't good for anyone, especially the children that have to kind of walk through it. So we're hoping to support more of that kind of stuff across the country, and also, Friends of the Earth have really been, part of this story nationally as much as possible. We're trying to, share the stories of people that are affected by air pollution and support people to do that locally as well. One of the big things about the campaign we're really proud of is that our local groups and activists have been able to pretty much get front page coverage of all the local papers, because actually this is an issue that people care about. So it's so important that you know, you carry on having these discussions and raising, because I think there's so many more people that actually want to do something about it and actually deserve, as I said before, the right to breathe clean air. So I really look forward to the discussion, and really look forward to learning from you and hearing from you what you'd like to do and kind of what potential support Friends of the Earth can offer you. But thank you very much for inviting me to speak. Thank you.
Just to say that at the end I might get Michael to give a little bit of a talk, because we actually took up your opportunity and did some air tubes around our area to test what the pollution was like nearby. But we'll come on to that in a minute. It's now Anna Puciato who's going to speak to us from AECOM's perspective about air pollution in the planning system.
And PowerPoint is working.
So I would like to start, I would like to ask you to take a deep breath and try to imagine that each of us breathes around 10 liters of air throughout the minute. So welcome everyone, thank you for inviting me. My name is Anna Puciato. I am an air quality consultant for a company called AECOM, and tonight I will tell you a few words about planning in London and air quality. So I think we are all familiar with that kind of headlines, like Carol mentioned. We've got more and more research telling us about links between air quality, air pollution and health impacts. So I think this is nothing new to us. However, the knowledge is growing. I think we now making clear distinction between climate change and air quality as well, which I think maybe 10 years ago or 5 years ago, that wasn't a case. So air quality is a global problem. Is affecting lots of cities and areas around the world. So London shares the same issues. We all probably familiar with low emission zones, ultra low emission zone, congestion charge, and air quality action plans published by London government. So why so much noise around air quality? So first of all, that's the health issues, which are mentioned and summarized with the figures. But the second important issue, a reason for that is that we've got very strict regulation, national and European Union regulation to comply with, and we are facing quite high financial fines if you're not complying with the objectives. So in UK, the air quality strategy regulation set up a standards level for number of pollutants, which they can be harmful for human health and as well for environment. Can we get back to the slide? Sorry. So I think it's 9 of pollutants. However, in London we are looking at close for incidences of NO2, which is nitrogen dioxide, and particulate matter. So yes, if we next slide. So the main sources, as Aaron mentioned, this is the mobile sources, which is on-road and off-road traffic, but that's also an account for the shipping in London. And we've got stationary sources, which basically those sources account for all kind of energy and heat generation within London. So that's energy centre, power plants, and then we've got also very major, one of the major sources in London is demolition construction sources. And here we talk about those sources as a short-term sources because they are only limited by the time of the construction. And here we will have on-road and off-road machinery, all kind of HGVs and machinery used during the construction, as well as the dust generation during the demolition construction. Well, challenges in London, I'm sure there is plenty. I very quickly put up on the slide 3 main challenges. So London is still very car dominant city. As we are all aware, you might not have big car ownership community, but in London there are still areas which they heavily dependent on cars, what was obviously affecting central London areas. And that leads to congestion and poor quality, obviously. The next challenge is the growing population of London, and basically this is not obviously problem only in London. It's just as we've got more people living now in urban areas than in rural areas. So I think because we've got growing population in the cities, we have to face this need for the economic development. We obviously have to provide, people come to the cities because they look for jobs, they look for better life, and we have to provide the infrastructure, we have to provide places where people can live, we have to provide schools, we have to provide hospitals, we have to provide roads. Basically, we have to accommodate all of the people moving to the urban areas. And obviously, the population, the growth in population is not exactly coming in pair with the growth in housing, which is the reason why London policy is so focused on growth in the residential sector. So I think that's the main challenges of London. There is no silver bullet for air quality problem, as we all know. It's very complicated, it's interdependent with other areas, but I would like you all to think that development itself is not a negative thing. So the planning systems shouldn't sterilize development. So instead of stopping all development, we have to adopt an integrated approach, which not only reduce the emission from the vehicles, but also reduce number of the roads and the car dependency. We have to use the smart design to build roads and buildings to protect people from the exposure to poor air quality, but at the same time we have to ensure that people which are living in those buildings, they can fully appreciate the habitable space we're giving them. And we need to build a smart cities with new developments, and even if those new developments, they have some emissions, because they will have some emissions, we have to remember that by bringing new developments, we actually can, in long term, improve the situation by introducing new technologies, building improved facilities, or encourage funds for new facilities, which just over the years will actually improve. So if we're going to build something new in the area where we've got some building which is actually 50 years old, and by introducing a new development with, I don't know, clean energy center, we're replacing something which been put in the place 50 years ago. So I basically would like to think about development as a progress, an opportunity rather than an obstacle, because we cannot escape from development. The development is needed, and is needed in an area like this. And if you ask me, and I work with lots of developers as well, if you ask me, the ideal situation for me would be seeing the planning applications, not with the list of mitigation attached to them, but with list of opportunities that those developments are bringing to the areas. And I think this approach should be scaled down into your area, into Oval. I think we should all work with the developers, and I understand that some of the developments or some of the developers might abuse certain regulations, but this is the moment to set up expectations, so the opportunities can be delivered. And at the end, I only, this is like a just summary of, next slide, summary of actions which previously different councils in central London introduced. So for example, Kensington and Chelsea introduced some subcharge for the diesel vehicles. They also focused the planning process on introduction of low emission developments and low emission technologies. Next slide. City of London in their policy have that every development has to be air quality neutral. They introduce additional enforcement for construction and demolition process, and they also support few schemes which they actually encourage people to cycle and walk. And Hackney, the next slide. And Hackney also support the air quality neutral standards. And has got in their policy that all domestic boilers in the new developments has to be ultra low NOx boilers. They also, through by application planning, conditions support installation of electric charging points in new developments. Thank you.
So, you've heard the bigger context. I would love it if we could shut Durham Street for no traffic day for the children of St Anne's School, or indeed Harleyford Road for those at St Mark's. But who has any questions now?
When I was growing up in school, I was told that the rise and the fall of the Roman Empire was because of lead poisoning. So. Revise. But it was interesting what both of you said in regard to monitoring, because I often see the reports and I go outside and I can smell it, it's on my neck, it's in my clothes, and I can actually see it on the windows. And I sometimes think that monitoring isn't the whole story. And then in regard to so I'd like you to say something about that. And secondly, in regard to development and the planning process, we as citizens come in at the wrong time, in my opinion. We come in when it's already been decided. We have consultations, but usually after it's... So how does that kind of monitoring and getting real facts and getting real development to benefit us all? Thank you.
So do you want to answer?
Sure, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's a really good question on the issue of monitoring. So we created those kind of clean air kits to, the purpose was to actually try and have, get people to have like a bit of an experience around learning about air pollution. We do realise that a huge amount of monitoring is done already by, the government, and the data is there around the impact of air pollution. It was just kind of a way really of people taking part in an experiment in the hope they go, actually, this indicates to me there's a problem. Kind of don't believe necessarily everything I read in the papers or kind of what Friends of the Earth tell me. I want to find out myself. And then go on to do some sort of action. So that was the kind of purpose of them. But you're absolutely right. We don't need every bit of effort to go into, trying to, have the best kind of like monitoring available. We already know there's a big problem. As you can say, you can actually see it sometimes. But I think for many people, they do find it quite hard to engage with this. It's not something you notice, and I think lots of people's memory or kind of what they would have learned about air pollution might have been through kind of the massive smogs that kind of happened, in the mid 20th century. And I think that's just not that similar kind of view of it. So it kind of has a purpose, but it's not the be all and end all. So I agree with your point.
Thank you. I cannot comment on the planning process. I'm not a planner. I think the answer for this question is basically what you are doing at the moment to set up a strong policy within your neighborhood. Because even if the consultation they are quite far in the line, I think if there's strong policy in there, but I mean policy which can be implemented, which is strong enough to not, so it can be implemented so there is no holes in the policy can possibly, I cannot say guarantee, but possibly can move things into the right direction.
Let's hope so.
I wanted to ask about reducing air pollution. Now we know that in term time, compared to holidays, there's twice as much traffic on the road because of parents taking their kids to school. Now in America, they've got this wonderful yellow bus that takes children to school. Can you ever see local councils being able to afford that, or even schools being able to go and collect children? I mean, I know certain private schools have school buses, but that would be a really great way of reducing the amount of traffic on the road.
So who would like to answer? Both of you?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important, and yeah, you can see, can't you, get so much busier around those drop-off and pick-up times. I think the reality is, isn't it, and you will have come up against this working with the council, you know, we are in an age of austerity, and you know, council budgets have been cut significantly. So I do feel like that's, you know, we actually need that investment back in, you know, we need actually the local authority, you know, to provide services, you know, for the betterment of the community, and that's around, you know, better environment and better health, and actually, you know, saving people money really long term, especially if you're, you know, it's expensive to kind of run a car. You know, it's too expensive for many people as well to get public transport. It's not cheap enough. So I think that's probably the kind of the context that I would point to. So it's kind of like there is another kind of like struggle we have to weigh as well. It is for that investment we want to see. And I think, as I said before, it really is the, you know, the companies that have made, you know, billions and billions and continue to do so by flogging kind of, you know, fossil fuels, oil, gas. You know, we've seen the exploration of fracking in recent weeks kind of like start up. That's the kind of the industries that need to obviously stop what they're doing and actually pay for the damage that they've done to society, and then we can kind of fund those kind of schemes. But actually, I do think there's room for innovation, and you know, if parents, for example, or concerned residents could say, how about we investigate doing a yellow bus for the area, I think that would be wonderful. We'd definitely welcome. See, that's a really good idea. I just want to say, this is the Clean Air Schools book. I'll just pass it around so you can have a look. Please do give it back to me, because at the end, so I have to take it back. Yeah, I'll pass it over to Anna.
Just want to add that, of course, the school bus is a great idea only if people are going to use it, only if that will be some sort of compulsory use. We definitely wouldn't like to see a bus on the road empty and people taking kids to school in the cars because it's convenient, and I think that's what it is very often in London. I think, from my perspective, I think it's good to encourage people to just walk to school. If that is within a radius of 5 kilometers, it takes really 20 minutes. And it's just creating a good habit of walking. So yeah, I think both initiatives are good, but I would definitely support walking.
I've done an awful lot of work with primary schools, particularly my daughter's primary school in Tower Hamlets. I just wanted to completely back up what Bollore was saying there. 96% of the students that were going to my daughter's primary school in Tower Hamlets lived within 1,000 metres of the school. There's really no need for a bus at all. They can, virtually all of them can walk, and the ones that can't, the less able ones, have their own special transport anyway. Once they get to secondary school, the public transport network is there for them to use.
Though I will say, as a South Londoner, if your kids go by train, they don't get as much of a cheap rate as if they're on a tube, and that is something I think should be campaigned.
Well, I'd like to thank the speakers for their time and for coming to visit us this evening. I was just wondering if you know the breakdown of air pollution between ordinary road traffic and heavy industry and construction, maybe also including those SUVs and that kind of stuff. And just if you know, roughly speaking, how that breaks down, I'm just kind of curious.
Anna, do you want to answer that one? So it's to do with construction and exploration.
But do you mean breakdown in what way? Is that what is the percentage, or?
Yeah, like
split. Well, no, on the top of my head I don't. I can try find this information for you if you email me. Definitely, as you all know, London, it's a big construction site. We've got lots of construction going on, especially in your area, as you mentioned at the beginning. The 9 Elms opportunity area is all building. So that will be definitely at this moment in time when it's happening, and when we've got lots of different developments being constructed at the same time, you will definitely have quite a big percentage of pollution coming from the HGVs, which they obviously serve the sites, but as well from the machinery which is employed to construct. Obviously, that creates additional congestion as well on the roads.
And that is noted in Lambert's AQA on air quality. This is the last question for this section, and then we'll move on.
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of the meeting, or some of the meeting, so I'm not sure what you talked about. But did wood smoke get a mention at all from people burning wood in their homes? It's just adding to the cocktail of toxic stuff out there, and it doesn't seem to get much of a mention. I know that Mayor Khan has highlighted it. There's been a government paper or consultation on it. I'm just wondering if any of these speakers have anything to say about that aspect of things.
Thank you. So if you'd like to answer that, Aaron.
Thank you. Yeah, so wood-burning stoves and kind of open fires are definitely a big problem in London, especially when it seems to just be the really trendy thing to get them installed over the years. And kind of the more we find out about them is that kind of eco, wood pellets, whatever, are just absolutely terrible when they do get burnt, and when they go out there and people breathe them in. So I kind of think it's definitely a problem. Actually, it does contribute to the worst kind of like most dangerous form of air pollution as well, particular matter pollution, which is really, really tiny particles which can like kind of penetrate into your lungs, and actually some of them can even get into your kind of bloodstream. So it is serious, and we want to see that really kind of curbed as much as possible. I do think it's been talked about less, maybe because the thing that the government is there's illegal levels of one type of air pollution, that's kind of nitrogen and dioxide, and the big issue of that is that it's coming from transport. I think that's why it's talked about a bit more, but it definitely is a problem, and people should be considerate actually and think about what they're pumping out into the gardens and into the basically into the lungs of all their neighbours and people across the area.
Barbecues as well.
Sorry.
Barbecues.
Okay, so we'll now move on to the next set of speakers, and then we'll have a round table. So if I could introduce Frédéric Le Ballois, who is from Source London.
Oh, sure. Good evening, everyone. So, as it says, I am from Source London. What it means is I am deploying electric charge points all across London, or trying to. Let's start with a simple question. How many of you have a car? Oh, it's not bad. So we are about right against the London population. So if you think 1 person in 5 roughly has a car, that gives you the kind of spread. And that's what I will take you through over the next 3 hours. No. So really, what I wanted to give you today is a little bit of where we come from and why we do what we do, and then move on how we work with the borough and how we work for the residents, and then give you a little bit of what you can do yourself to change the world. As Aaron explains, there are some underlying issues, right? We have all the IPCC who said we might not have a future. Before we used to worry about the polar bears, now we are included in. So it becomes more personal, okay? And we have to move on to a solution. But so far it's been really difficult to move to any solution because there is something which is existing, which is relatively easy. You have a car, you go down the road, you fill it up, and you can drive for hours, and it doesn't cost you that much. So, sorry. Thank you. It's all right, you've got time now. So that's the first hour slide. So here you start thinking that I am really French and mental, but no. There is a reason why you've got this chicken or chicks and eggs. That's the EV underlying issue, right? The chicken are about the infrastructure, and the eggs are about the cars. So when you ask people why they don't buy a car, or buy an electric car, they say, oh, but there is no infrastructure. And when you point the infrastructure at them, they say, oh, yeah, but there's not the right car at the moment. So it's self-sustaining issue. And a lot of people are not aware that an electric car is just a normal car. There is a lot of worries that have been fed from the early technology, which are the range and the availability of the network. So if you bought an electric car a few years ago and you bought a pure electric, you had a really small battery, which meant you probably could go across London and then you wouldn't have to wait for a little time before you can come back home or take the tube alternatively. However, the technology has moved on, and nowadays you have cars which enable you to do 250 miles, and that's a first step, right? Because it's still moving on, the battery technology is moving on. However, coming back to where the company I work for came from, in 2013, the company acquired Source London. And the main reason was to solve the issue of the chicken and the egg. If we bring the hardware and we give people the opportunity to try through a pure electric car club, try the technology, they will have the idea that electric vehicles are not that bad and are actually quite convenient for them. Because if you think about it, most of the trips that people are doing are below, if we say below 30 kilometers or 30 miles, we will cover probably 95%. I look at Guy, my colleague, just to make sure that I don't score a black mark on that one. But yeah, if you think about all the trips that you are usually making, apart from when you are going across the country once a year, it will all be around, yeah, maximum 30 miles. And that's where you don't need an IC or, internal combustion engine vehicle. Because for most of your journeys, you can do it with an electric car. And there is this one time where you will need an alternative technology. So far, so good? So, therefore, the company decided, okay, we will work with the boroughs, we will offer them some infrastructure, we will bring some charge points, and that's Source London, and there will be an electric car club, and we hope that we build momentum. We make it visible, we use all good marketing technologies, and we say, look, they exist, they are not bad, they work. So we are working with the boroughs, so Guy and myself are working on a daily basis with the borough. We have 22 boroughs we are talking to, and what we offer them is, look, we take this issue away because we understand, as Aaron mentioned earlier on, the boroughs are pretty tight with time and money. and they don't have the space to think about how do we manage to deploy this network. And we bring a no-cost solution for the borough, because all the company I work for pledged 100 million to support the London deployment. And we are also bringing as an option for the boroughs, we say, look, if it's not taking off quickly, you have this option as a 100% electric car club. And that enables the borough to spur people into action to move from internal combustion engine to electric cars. What we do as well, the last point, working with the borough again, we discuss with you like tonight, and we engage with people to understand what's the best way to do it. Because we can very well put 3 charge points in the back in the dark over there, and they will never be used. By working with you, we'll understand where we should put them, who is likely to use them, and then we have a much better solution. Now moving to the residents and what we call usually customers. One of the key issues for the customers is, will the equipment that I am coming to work? And that's where Ellen gave me a kick. But in theory, according to my documents on my reports, it's supposed to be at 99% availability for our charge point. So when Ellen told me earlier on she had a problem, she brought her car and it didn't recognize her, I am a little bit annoyed, and I will have to take that later on, but it's okay. But it's really important, because there is nothing worse than when you turn, and you have experienced it, if you turn up somewhere with a view to buy something and it's not there, it's really frustrating. It's even more frustrating when it's helping you to do something else. So if you want to go and collect your children and you can't have this energy that you need, you will be really cross. And Ellen is really cross at me. But that's okay. I will try to deal with it. I think from a perspective of, because I asked you who didn't have a car, and we appreciate that it's not fair for people who don't want to drive in London to pay for people who are driving. And it's a difficult issue for the boroughs, because if they are seen subsidizing one type of transport against another, they get in trouble. With the option we are bringing, we try to help them to dissociate themselves, and hopefully we are not impacting the one who want to walk or cycle, because we have to respect people's choice. Finally, one of the key points, and that's where we have to come back to all the scene setting we had before. We are providing 100% green energy to our charge point. I know Aaron said, look, the diesel are bad. The diesel are only bad if they are used in a confined environment. I'm not saying you did say something wrong. I'm saying that's true. It is true they are producing some nasty emissions, okay? But at the same time, they are producing less CO2 than gasoline. So you can't have one solution that fits everything. You can't go to America with a car. That's difficult. You need a plane. But you're right, in town, diesel shouldn't be used. But if you are going to Glasgow and you need to drive absolutely, you're probably better off driving a diesel rather than a gasoline. Sorry, you can shoot me after that. But that's because you have to manage different constraints. And we will have to do trade-off to find the right solution that fits all the needs of our population, all the movements that are required. So by providing 100% green energy to our charge points, what happens is actually we are not killing Birmingham, and we are maximizing the benefit of switching to electric vehicle. So it means that people who move from internal combustion engine to electric are bringing something more. Next one. Last hour. 2 minutes? It's okay. That's fine. So, just giving you that briefly, we are moving. All the blue ones are the people we are working with. Some other we are in discussion. Sorry, Lambeth is in white. We knew that. We have been discussing, but not moving our way. Briefly, we will be at 1,000 charge points by the end of the year, and that will be quite a milestone for us. But that means there is quite a good coverage for people who want to move across London. As you know, the old ways, as I mentioned in the title, are quite centered to the outer, but there is fairly little when you want to go clockwise. So it's how you bring that in. Next slide, because I have only 1 minute left. Now, call to action for all these people who have a car. For the other one, you can take a note anyway, try to find somebody and tell them what I just said now. What we have brought to life is a website called Power My Street. And this Power My Street is a way to help the boroughs to take decisions. It's to make visible the demand from people who want to either have an electric car or who would like to switch to an electric car but are concerned that they don't have a charge point by their house. What we have is this website where we have the data, but we also make it accessible to the boroughs and to our competitors, because we realize that we are not everywhere in London, and we have to make sure that people do the right thing and install charge points in the right location. How am I doing?
You've got less than a minute.
Moving to the people who don't have a car but think that they can rent a car at the weekend. If you don't have a car, you always have an electric solution. You have Blue City, there are other alternative car clubs that exist. They enable you to have a car only when you need it and not leave it sitting 95% of the time. And if you have questions, thoughts on how to change the world, that's my address. Just contact me and we'll sort that.
Thank you very much. Now ask Caspar to come up and tell us about bikes and cycling and cargo bikes.
Come.
Yeah, go for it.
It's already queued up. There you go.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to start with a very little bit about me. I've got a number of hats. One is I'm on the organising group of a campaign group called Stop Killing Cyclists. I run a cycling events company, and I also run an event called the Urban Hill Climb. And we've got 2 cargo bike categories in the Urban Hill Climb, which means I've got a whole load of really nice photographs of cargo bikes going up hills. And so, can you just flip back 1 second, Byron? Thank you. So, I'm also a director of a company called the Climate Media Coalition. I'm one of the directors, the other is a retired politician and an international coach. But cargo bikes are very simply smarter, cleaner, faster, safer and cheaper than virtually anything else around small distance in London. London's been congested certainly since I came here in the 90s. I went to music college, and like so many people that left music college, I became a cycle courier after I finished music college. And the average speed of vehicles in the late 90s was 8 miles an hour. This year, it was 7.47 miles an hour. So it's been pretty static in time. My average speed, when I was a cycle courier delivering around about 30 drops a day, was just over 14 miles an hour. So, and we used to go out to, we were based in the centre of London, and we used to go out as far as Richmond, Twickenham, and I think it was about 45 minutes, if we could get out to about 45 minutes, around about the same sort of speed as a motorbike. Coming back was a little bit more tiring after that sort of effort. But when I was a courier then, there weren't that many cargo bikes. I knew most of the cargo bike riders. Since then, there has been, over here, an explosion in cargo bike riders, especially in the last couple of, I would say the last half a dozen years. There has been a much bigger explosion on the continent. When in 1999 I went to the Cycle Messenger World Championships, and they had a cargo bike category there. And there were 30 or 40 entrants then from all over Europe. There wasn't one entrance from the UK. And that's basically what inspired me to include the cargo bike categories in the Urban Hill Tunnel I run in North London. Next slide, please. So this fella, Alessandro, is the first DHL cargo bike rider on this thing. Is called an armadillo. And it's 100 kilos net, and it can carry, this one can carry up to 350 kilos. And basically, these pods that are on the back are delivered to their depot, then they're popped on these bikes, and off they go. So this is an absolute perfect example of a last mile solution. And he pegged that up Swains Lane, and really hurt himself doing so. But he is the first, the DHL are the first courier company to use this system, and he is the only rider that has got this at the moment. These are quite popular in Germany and Denmark and Holland, and they will start to get traction over here. The emerging cycle network, which is tiny at the moment, it's on 0.1% of the roads in London, and the decent protected infrastructure means that these guys can get around quickly. Along the embankment, these guys will be much faster than a van. So yes, thankfully Carlton Reid has just done a big article on cargo bikes, so I was able to plagiarise a lot of his statistics, and he's just started writing for Forbes. But van traffic has grown by 71% over the last 20 years. Got an awful lot to do with the internet deliveries, and also supermarket deliveries as well. The technology needs to become smarter, cleaner, quieter, smaller and safer. And this is exactly the answer to that, basically. There's nothing, I don't know where the statistics are, but I think it's on the next page. But there's just an enormous amount. Everything that I took when I was a cycle courier, it could easily obviously be fixed on a bike, but there were an awful lot. The van rates started at 5 kilos. For us, for other companies, van rates started at 8 kilos. We were regularly carrying 30 or 40 kilos in a bag on our back. These guys are carrying 350 kilos. They're just such an obvious solution. Average unloading and loading time for vans and lorries is 12 minutes. The same freight can be unloaded in 3 minutes from a cargo line. So that, along with the parking and the parking and the, can we flip on to the next slide? I've got one of these. This is what I cycle around. I spent half my life in London and half my life in Exeter, and this is what I take. This is what I do the shopping in Exeter. This is what I take my daughter around to see her friends with in Exeter. My wife's down in Exeter, has got a car. It's not London. We need to traverse Devon quite a lot, so you can't drive 40 miles onto the middle of the moor with a cargo bike. I unfortunately didn't realise quite how hilly Exeter is, and I didn't get the battery version of the back feeds. I'm going to swap it in. I can and change it to the battery version. What I learned is on this hill here, last year I didn't include a e-assist cargo bike, and some of these guys, Chris this year included, couldn't get up the hill with his daughter in. They had to get off and push for a little bit. Pedal Me, which you'll see in a later slide, couldn't get up the hill last year and he had to get off and push. It took him just over 5 minutes to get up the hill. This year, I included an e-assist section, They made it up there in less than 3 minutes. Next slide, please, Ryan. Okay, so this is a much smaller Omnium cargo bike. These are quite popular in London. You can fit, saves the periods back for a start, you can fit a considerable amount of cargo on the front, and they are really quick and really nippy through traffic. Okay, so the government recently announced that they have created a £2 million fund to subsidise purchasing new cargo bikes, saving 20% off the price. There is a fund for electric cars, isn't there? Do you know how much it is per vehicle? 5,000.
Well, it's just gone down. They're taking it away as of next month.
Okay, so this is new. Then this is going against the grain, definitely. Jesse Norman is the Minister for Cycling. He has some fun ideas about supporting cycling in certain areas. And this is an absolute classic statement from him. The cargo bikes, support for e-cargo bikes will help to ensure the UK leads the way in development and deployment of technologies for the future. We're way behind over here. We're decades behind Germany, the Netherlands. All the really good cargo bikes are coming out. I mean, they've got 174 models over there, 50 of which were on show this year at Berlin's International Cargo Bike Festival. You won't get 50, you won't find 50 different models in London at all. You know, we're decades behind, really, and the main reason that we're decades behind is because we just have not got the infrastructure. We need a dense network of properly protected cycle lanes, properly filtered residential areas. Then we will see people starting to take their kids to school on cargo bikes, and you'll see people starting to go and do their local shopping on cargo bikes, or even if they're Omniums like this, or I often just go and do the shopping on my Brompton, which I have years of experience being in a cycle career. I'm hardened to the traffic. The second I go out with my daughter, I completely change my behaviour. And that's exactly what we want to be seeing. If we have a proper protected network of cycle lanes, then the youngsters and the older people can all get out and use it safely. There's no barrier to cycling these days. As soon as you pop a battery on a bike, anybody can ride a bike up any hill. It's quite simple. Next one, Caspar. So this is Pedal Me. This fellow's called Ben. He used to be boss of the transport department up at Camden Council, and then he had an idea to create these bikes. These are made to his design, Urban Arrow. I think they're Danish. I'm sure they're Danish. Dutch or Danish. So he sent over this design, has worked with them, has made these, and they are just ticking off like there's no tomorrow. They're just crowdfunding at the moment, and they have got 18 of them operating in London, and they've got another 32 being made at the moment. They're hugely popular because they're really cheap. They're much cheaper than a black cab. Obviously, there's no pollution issues. They're much safer. There hasn't been one fatality attributed to any pedicabs in London ever. There's been a couple of incidents that have resulted in injuries, a couple of broken legs, but there's not been a single fatality. And he's also shared with me the data about trip length and time, and they're quicker than cabs. They're quicker than Uber, they're quicker than black cabs. And these things are absolutely amazing. So this is the guy that had to get off and push last year, almost at this point. And this year, with the battery, he halved his time going up the hill with Marie is the load, just under 7 kilos. Yes, please. So, cargo bikes come in all different shapes and sizes, and I think it's really important to include the fact that you get taxi bikes with these guys. This is a company that started in Exeter, S-Cargo. They've got 3 of these, and they are absolutely flourishing down there. We often have, last year at the same hill climb, we had a coffee stall. They rode there from Leighton on their bike, served coffee at the top. They even ground it with the pedals. And I was chuffed to bits when I found a little kid's cargo bike. I didn't know they existed myself, but there you go, they're fantastic things. Next slide, please. So there has been recently a trial done by Sainsbury's in, it's the Streatham store, and it's E-Cargo is the courier company that they have used to start doing the deliveries from their cargo bikes. 96% of their deliveries can be made by cargo bike. It's, again, so cheap. They've started offering £1 deliveries. They can get closer to the customer. There are no parking issues. In one of the other jobs I had was a transport manager for the same photographic company that I was a cycle courier for. They bought a lighting company and I had to manage a department full of van drivers. We had a cargo bike and we had a whole, had about a dozen, it shrunk by then, had about a dozen cycle couriers. And I used to have to spend probably, I would say, 1.5 to 2 days a month dealing with parking tickets from the van drivers, just because it's so incredibly difficult to park a van for short times legally in central London. That's not an issue with these, not remotely an issue. You can fit into small areas. You can even slot it on the pavement and not be in anybody's way in a lot of these occasions. Delivered my daughter at the weekend to see her friend. There was no parking spaces at all, and I just chucked my bike on the end of the double yellow line. It fits nicely in the gap, not getting in anybody's way. You're not obscuring the junction that I was close to. It was brilliant. Yes, it's a more efficient and cheaper service, and they virtually eliminate pollution. And Sainsbury's have said that they are going to be expanding the service. What I really liked about this is they started with the cargo bike delivery 100 years ago. Next slide, please. Okay, so the pedicabs aspect of this is really important. Pedicabs are really valuable people movers. 40% of the traffic in congestion charge zone is cabs, and it's split evenly down the middle, 20% black cabs, 20% private hire vehicles. So somebody asked earlier on what percentage of pollution in, what I can say is, in central London, the largest single source of pollution is cabs. Black cabs in particular are terrible. They have a general ownership life of 15 years, so we've got a lot of very old vehicles driving around polluting. The new ones are great, but obviously it doesn't deal with congestion. As Frederick said earlier on, 75% of all car journeys are less than 5 miles, which is about 25 minutes for anyone on an electric assist bike. And Pedal Me are reporting faster journey times than cabs, because they are cleaner, faster, safer and cheaper. Although I would say, as a caveat to this, what's desperately lacking in the pedicab trade is some light touch regulation. At the moment, the price varies between pedicab pilot to pedicab pilot, and it varies quite a lot. Pedal Me does away with all of that with their app, but if there was a little bit of light touch regulation to these guys, they'd be away, it'd be a flourishing industry. And the last slide, I think, echoing what has been said here earlier on, the IPCC I think it's the Intergovernmental Climate Change Panel. This has scared me senseless. I've got an 11-year-old daughter, and currently it looks like she might not be able to reach the end of her life peacefully and naturally. We have 12 years to rapidly decarbonise our society or face possible extinction by the turn of the century. This is what the UN says. This is what the 6,000 scientists have been saying. That the IPCC have been engaged, have been saying, to reach our Paris obligations, we need to replace around 80% of internal combustion engine trips with transport that is carbon free. And EVs may be a small part of this solution, but the problem with EVs is they carry an embedded carbon footprint very, very similar to ICEs, to fossil fuel-based cars. That's between 6 and 40 tonnes. We've got to realistically be aiming for 1 tonne each. At the moment, we're about, it's 7 to 8 tonnes is the average per person per capita in the UK. We need to be aiming for 1 tonne if we want to keep to the Paris Agreement. And cargo bikes are an amazing part of the solution.
I have time for about 2 to 3 questions. Would anybody like to ask a question? Yep.
Hi, well it wasn't so much a question as I thought it might be helpful to tell people what's happening in Lambeth. So as well as being ward councillor for this area, I'm also the cabinet member for environment and clean air. So there's been quite a lot, and I'm the new cabinet member since May, and there's been a lot of stuff said tonight, which I think is really exciting. And we're doing masses on clean air, we need to do more. I totally endorse what Aaron said about 9,000 Londoners a year and dying prematurely, etc., etc. And clean air was added to my portfolio precisely to raise the profile of it, to show how central it is. And I agree that we have to have a public health approach to it, because it is a public health crisis. Helen said that there was nothing happening up here from the Air Quality Action Plan. I don't know what you're reading, but if I can reel through some of the stuff that we're doing in Lambeth at the moment. Every year we're having the Clean Air Week, we have Car Free Day, anti-idling, etc. We successfully lobbied the mayor to for the ULEZ. We wanted to go down to the M25, it's only going to South Circular. Shame, but we're going to continue lobbying him for it to go further. We successfully lobbied the mayor to get the A23 as a low zero emission zone for buses, and now we want to expand that to all of the bus routes in Lambeth. We are part of the Healthy Route strategy, which there's a lot of exciting stuff going on around that, which is about walking, cycling, getting out your car, public transport, etc. In our manifesto this year, we committed to 1,000 more bike hanger spaces. We were the first borough in London to do bike hangers. We do more bike training than any other borough. We want to improve it and do more, and we want to target it at secondary school kids. At the moment, it's a lot of primary school kids doing it, and I know Charlie's nodding as he does a lot of bike training, and we need to expand it more. And something was said about how air pollution hits our most disadvantaged communities, and it does. And like, cycling may feel that it's free once you're up and running, but actually to get cycling, for a lot of people it feels unaffordable. They have nowhere to store their bike, they don't have the confidence to do it. So we're very much wanting to expand that out and look at our poorer communities, go onto our estates and see how we can make cycling more accessible for all. In terms of electric charging points, we're commissioning at the moment, and we're going to have 100 in 2019, and we've got a commitment to install 200. And obviously things like the removal of the gyratory in Vauxhall, which I know wasn't particularly popular with some people around here, but it's something that we've been campaigning for, because it's about making Vauxhall a walking and cycling and public transport area rather than a little mini motorway and gyratory. And I think that's hopefully going to be really exciting when it happens. Now, in terms of schools, we're doing a lot with schools. We're just about to pilot school streets. Someone mentioned Hackney. And we're doing it for 2 schools to look at what works, because there's different ways you can do it, different infrastructure you can use, different systems. And then we're going to hopefully roll it out to all our schools. We've been working with our schools in terms of air monitoring. I know it's not just about air monitoring, I agree. It's also about what we do. We've been doing travel plans. We're part of the TfL STARS programme as well, which is about how to get kids and their parents walking to school, getting the kids walking to school and rewarding schools and working with them on clean air plans as well. We're also introducing green screens in schools, and our most polluted schools, and at St Anne's just here there's a living wall being installed. So there's a huge number of things that we're doing, and I agree we need to do more. We need to work together with community groups, other national and local pressure groups, Lungs for Lungs, Friends of the Earth. What we've launched today is our transport strategy. I'd really invite everyone to go online and respond to it. It sort of sits beneath the local plan, but it's also a strategy just in and of its own right. And we're already fewer than half our residents own cars in this borough. And they tend to be more down in the south of the borough car owners. But we still need to get more people walking and cycling and making accessible and understanding what the barriers are that stop people doing that. We need to work with rail companies and the government in terms of, I totally agree with your point, Helen, about trains being so expensive. If you could go on and respond to the consultation on the transport strategy, because we really want to make Lambeth a walking, cycling, public transport borough, because we do have really dirty air. and Vauxhall is a hotspot for dirty air, as well as Brixton, and we really do need to clean up our air. I'd be very happy to work with everyone in the room. This is not about politics, this is about cross-border, working with all sorts of organisations. And if anyone's got ideas and wants to contact me, you can contact me via Lambeth website. I should just say that Charlie and I were also at a workshop the other night, for example, on livable neighbourhoods. We're putting in a bid for Brixton to be one. So there's a lot of exciting projects out there, and we know that there's more to do, and it'd be really exciting to work with you, and it's great that you're discussing clean air tonight.
Hi, can I just make a little bit of a plea that I know we've talked tonight about actually electric vehicles. They are a massive improvement on petrol or diesel vehicles, but they still produce PMs, so they do produce air pollution, and that's because a big amount of PMs is from the friction of the tyres on the road, the brake dust and that kind of thing. And so the answer to improving our air pollution is not just to switch people to electric vehicles. We have to reduce vehicle use, private vehicle use further in London overall. But you know, obviously we want to do that in our area to improve air quality. And I think we just need to be quite mindful when we're putting in charging points in lots of areas across London. They're actually sort of taking pavement space to do that, and actually, you know, ultimately we need to make sure that things like charging points don't interfere with people that want to walk and cycle, because that actually should be, those walking should be the absolute top priority, you know, then cycling, and we need to make sure that all kids can walk or cycle to school.
Thanks. Can we have questions rather than statements? There's a lady here. It's a question.
Well, it's a sort of question. I've been really, it's really, you know, great stuff that's going on here, but I would like to ask people what they think about the fact that we've got the free bit of the congestion charge coming through here, because frankly, as someone who lives on Kennington Lane and can barely breathe, that is our major problem. And much lovely as it would be to close Durham Street for a day, while that is going through, and we've got Walnut Tree Walk School, we've got Vauxhall School, we've got St Martin's, we've got St Anne's, we've got all these schools, and surely the problem is not to do with people in Vauxhall driving cars, it's to do with people driving through. And so I'd just like to hear what people think about getting rid of that and how we could do it. And also, could I just say about the whole planning thing, the sort of question about the planning thing is, it's all very well saying, oh, we want to make homes better and all the rest of it, but we've just had like 6,000 homes built along the river that are not affordable, you know, lots of flats where the prices start at 2.5 million. So they're not for local people, and we're dealing with the building dust and the air pollution from the non-stop building work, which will be continued when they take down the gyratory system that only went up 10 years ago and was 4 years going up. And we're having to live with that. We're having to live with the consequences of that stuff in this area.
So, to get a question out of that, if I can come to Aaron first. The question relates to what can we do to minimise building dust and stop people driving through our area, because actually most people don't drive in our area, they drive through it.
I don't feel like I'm the most qualified person, because this really is around fundamentally planning, isn't it, and the kind of society we want, and you know, having to have integrated public transport system. It should never be that actually the best option is to drive. Actually, there should be public transport available, cycling and walking. I think that's just the general approach. So I feel like I can't give you a good enough answer, so I'll give it over to somebody else.
Anna, do you want to take it?
For the construction dust, I think this is called for the local council to put like an integration system. Each of these development, they by standard should have demolition and construction plan. It's down then to local council to coordinate that and make sure that this is delivered to the highest standard. It's also, I know from when I look at the measures or actions introduced by other local council in local area, there are some of them they introduce actually more strict approach to demolition and construction. And I think the answer for both questions really, it has to be local council has to work with other local authorities to get like a coordinated approach to target those issues, because like we said, there's no really big car ownership population, but you still deal with air quality problem.
So there's a short answer here.
About the congestion charge. When the congestion charge initially came in, it reduced the traffic on the roads by around about 40%. I can remember it was amazing when it happened. Until then, the price has hardly gone up at all. It needs to be completely revamped. I think it obviously needs to include all of the roads that have not been included, and it needs to, the western extension needs also to be opened, and rather than a congestion charge and a ULEZ zone, there needs to be a dynamic road pricing system that covers it all, that goes from distance, the size of the vehicle, how many people in it that you are carrying, because we really do need to disincentivise driving, as well as we need to prioritise public transport and active transport.
I will just add a little bit on that, and I think we have to differentiate what we are talking about. So in France at the moment there are some weeks where only certain cars can drive, also it's some days rather than some weeks. So you've got certain days where only electric cars can drive through the city in Paris, and anybody else is out, because that's for personal transportation. And I think you have to come back to what told me just before, or told us just before, around the 71% of the traffic being white man van. So now take this consideration, and okay, we can potentially deal with 29%, but be careful what you wish for about congestion charge, because ultimately the congestion charge is carrying goods that you are all buying. Yeah, but it's
okay, I have one more. Do you want to start and then?
Yeah, I have a question. About 6 weeks ago, I signed a petition for a car-free day all over London, a European car-free day. Did that actually happen? I didn't notice anything.
It happened in Paris, it happened in many cities in Europe. There were a couple of tiny little pockets in London where it happened, but it should be London-wide, September the 22nd.
Yes.
I was asked to speak originally, and I couldn't hear my diary early enough, so apologies that I'm not up there. To answer a few of the questions. First of all, about the construction end of things. Lambeth has actually been doing quite a lot, and TfL have been doing quite a lot.
It's not a question, it's an answer.
Okay, well what I suggest, because we have got to leave this room quite soon, is that people come to speak to Charlie after the meeting and they can get answers to the questions. There's one more question and then that really, I have to close the meeting.
Those car-free developments in Lambeth or all over London, probably, I don't know if other councils do that, where we find that they're actually allowing car parking to quite substantial numbers. Would it be possible to sort of reorientate that towards cargo bikes? Because we've talked about one problem with them is storing them securely, because you can't take them into your flat or your balcony or so. And so if instead of having car parking in the new developments, why not have cargo bike parking?
Yes, I completely agree. Why on earth not? It makes complete sense. You can
Bike hangers.
exactly. You can easily fit 2 cargo bikes per car space, probably more. Makes sense.
Okay, I'm afraid that time is up. It is 8:35 and we need to be out of this building quite soon. So thank you all for coming. There's one other thing I've been asked to remind you, because there's 3 live consultations at the moment which you can respond to for Lambeth. One is the draft local plan, the other, as you've heard, is the transport plan, and then finally there is a SIL, that's Community Infrastructure Levy consultation. They're all to be found on the Lambeth website under consultation. If you want to have some answers to questions about cycling, etc., please see Charlie after the meeting.
Actually about reducing traffic and about what's been happening with the building aspect of things.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I was just going to let everyone know that all of the presentations, slides, if that's okay with everyone, will be up on the website with their contact details and everything pretty well tomorrow. Lovely then.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Right, and now, Helen, you're leaving us, and you are a fantastic chair, and we really miss you.
Hold on.
Where should I stand?
This is not planned.
This is
My timing did not allow for
and
this.
thank you, and, well, obviously, we don't know how anyone can follow into your footsteps, but someone will, hopefully. And this is also for you. Thank you very much.
Much to all of you. I've really enjoyed being the chair and learnt huge amounts. There are things that I agree with, things that I disagree with, and I often will make my views known, but I'm sure somebody else will be able to do this and have just as much fun and learn as much as I have on this job. And yeah, please step up, somebody, because it is great.